All right, let me hit refresh. Sorry, folks. We are not professionals.
That just means we're not
The
getting
fifth
paid.
wave of feminism is here, and it's going to change the world as we know it. My prediction, this is going to be a counter movement to the fourth wave, where women start embracing their femininity instead of tearing down masculinity. Cool, women have joined men in the workforce, but now they've realized that they've lost sight of the things that actually make them strong women, like their warmth, their love, and their ability to nurture the people in their lives. They're realizing that they're now in debt to sexual liberation and hookup culture. It ruined them, and now they're realizing that competing with men resulted in no fulfillment whatsoever. They just serve their male boss instead of the man in their home. All for what? 12 weeks of paid maternity leave? Yeah, you could keep that. Feminism destroyed the traditional family and the natural dynamics between men and women. And now women are waking up. We're going to see a fifth wave, and the women that lead it will be the ones that recognize masculinity maintains society, while femininity maintains life. Welcome to the fifth wave, my guys.
Well, there you have it. So, Anastasia, we'll go to you for your initial reaction.
Honestly, if I'm being, when I think we're just overthinking it. I think the Bible's pretty clear about what a man's role is in the home and what a woman's role is in the home. I honestly would probably give my left arm to never hear the term feminism ever again because I think it's completely toxic and corrupt. Especially because I'm kind of like, what are we? I feel like feminism started with like wanting the right to vote and wanting this one, and I'm like, I don't really know what we're fighting for anymore because I'm fine. Like, I'm a woman and I go out and vote and I go out and eat all the time. I do all the things I want. So it's like, but no, I think, like I said, the Bible is very clear about what a woman's role is, what a man's role is. I think that we overthink it with what's happening in the culture when it's really just women have made feminism a false idol. And that's what we're praising. And we need to just go back to doing what our creator says to do.
Michael?
I like that. I'm writing that down. Feminism is a false idol. It is. I mean, goodness. How could I disagree? We've come from women's suffrage where there were actual inequality issues of women's voices being heard to now there are no limitations, and yet we still harp on the wage gap. And I say we, meaning our culture, we certainly do not, but I'm fascinated. I think it's maybe too broad to say that it's fifth wave, and it makes it sound like, oh, this is the direction that women are going to go. No, some will. Some have already been there. Some never needed to go through the first four waves because they were perfectly fine. Maybe the first wave, I don't know. But my take is just not dissimilar from Anastasia's position, that I'm kind of over the feminism, but I'm in a position where publicly I'm not supposed to say that because that makes me a bigot, right? So
Yeah.
My wife is liberated. She is able to speak publicly and can vote and makes a whole lot more money than I do at the moment. Can't say I'm thrilled about that, but that's got more to do with our position in life than my pride.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Anastasia, what would you say to this current movement that we see of biological males being awarded Women of the Year awards?
Mm.
How do I put this nicely?
Don't.
No, I don't, I feel like we're all just messed up, honestly, because I think it's something where I don't even know what women are fighting for anymore. Because to quote the great Matt Walsh, what is a woman at this point? When I see women fighting for quote unquote feminism or women's right, I'm like, who are we fighting? I'm like, which one, the real woman, or like this dude who pees in a boy's bathroom woman? Like, which one are we fighting for here? When I see men winning awards for women, I don't even, I'm like, maybe we do need feminism. I don't know. Maybe we do need to fight back and take back our rights. It bothers me. Honestly, yeah, I don't, I'm confused what we're fighting for anymore, other than it's boiled down to we're fighting over our morality. And I feel like that's what all of the issues are starting to really come to and open our eyes to and boil down to is, do you believe that there is a God who loves you and sent his son to die for you, or do you not? And I think that's what we're really fighting for. And even in the case of that shooting, even though we don't know too much right now, it makes me realize, as a conservative myself, going out and fighting for, like, against LGBT stuff every day, it makes me remember, though, how Jesus came to die for them just as much as he came to die for me. And so as we're continuing to fight for these things, we need to remember that they are God's children just as much as us, and they need love just as much as us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're desperate for it, and so desperate that they're looking in all the wrong places and killing people over it. Not all of them, of course, but yeah, there's a great comment from Susie Q in the chat. She said, honestly, when you all say fifth wave, my thought was men are the fifth wave.
Yeah. I think that's what the fourth wave is being described as, is kind of the transgender movement. I might have my waves off, but Susie Q also said something, and I'm just going to go here because it's an interesting thought. She said, "I would give up my right to vote if that means less people voting, 1 vote per household." So I've actually been hearing this quite a bit recently, being pushed mostly by other women, actually, the idea of repealing a woman's right to vote. So Anastasia, how do you feel about that?
Honestly, it's not something I'd thought of. I mean, I feel like I like to vote. Last time I checked, I was cool with it.
Yeah.
I mean, a 1 vote per household. I mean, I married my husband for a reason, so I trust him. It's not like you run out and vote for Joe Biden. But I don't know. I like my right to vote, so I'd probably keep it.
Well, there we go. Just an interesting thing, because I've been hearing that more and more, and I've been hearing it from women. It's just such an interesting thread. Michael, have you heard that at all?
No, it doesn't. It's not very sweet to the ear. I don't care for the idea, but
well, Susie Q, you'll have to convince us in the chat.
yeah.
And then Shara said, the feminists have been disturbingly silent with all this transgender stuff. Men are bringing applaud as the best women, and somehow this is okay. Oh, Shara also just sent another one. She said, go back to only property owners get to vote. People who don't pay taxes shouldn't be able to raise taxes on those of us who do. That is a fair point. I would say, I think what we're really wanting is those of us who are higher informed voters get really frustrated to see how easy it is to vote. And that's what a lot of the legislative fights over the last couple of years have been, is making voting so much easier to vote. So easy, in fact, that you're racist if you want to require an ID. And I think ultimately what you're getting at, Cher, is that, it's just, we wish that we could raise the threshold to some degree to where people who are voting who are actually bought into the system, because that's really where a lot of our mess is coming from right now, is too many people are voting without knowing what they're doing because they don't really have to suffer the consequences of the actions of their voting. But Anastasia, you mentioned that you are conservative. So I wanted to ask you, so as a conservative woman, how would you describe what conservative means to you, as well as how did you end up getting to this viewpoint, since a younger conservative woman is becoming somewhat of an anomaly?
Yeah. As far as how I got to this viewpoint, I mean, I grew up with my dad and grew up with him doing radio and everything. Grew up in a Christian household. I was really teed up to live a good Christian life. And then, as many kids do, they move out of their parents' home and they realize that their faith was grounded into their parents' faith, or their faith was grounded into their church friends. And then they get away from all that and they move into an apartment by themselves. And honestly, I really ran away from God in that aspect. I really ran away from who I was, what I believed. I started doing a lot of theater here in town in Des Moines, and was just overly saturated with the LGBTQ community and all that kind of jazz. And it was a lot. I mean, there's a reason that the Bible says don't be unequally yoked. It's not just for marriage, it's for the people you surround yourself with. And so it really just felt like I was drowning in just lies and people praising self instead of God. And it really wasn't until I met my husband, Stephen, and he was not a Christian. He had never been to church, nothing like that. And so, obviously I was not walking my best Christian life either at the time. But kind of going in depth with him about all of these stories and talking to him about the Bible, and then watching him become a Christian, and then watching myself fall back in love with being a Christian was a really cool journey for us. And I've just found that being a conservative for me means more aligning with issues that the Bible issue and aligns with as well. So, I mean, you're talking about being pro-life, you're talking about marriage, you're talking about sexuality, all those kinds of things. So I've just found that being a conservative lines up more so with my morals and my Christian beliefs. And it was hard for sure. I mean, honestly, Matt Walsh's What is a Woman came out, and a lot of my friends did not know what I thought or what I believed about any of this stuff. And when I posted the movie and I was like, you guys should really check it out, it's a great movie. It really educates you, helps you learn a lot. I started getting a lot of death threats, people that I had known growing up into high school, going into my college years, were telling me if they saw me on the street, they'd beat me up, telling me that they'd send people after me, telling me they knew where I lived, they'd come after me. And honestly, my church has been doing kind of an Easter series where we've been going over Jesus's last days, and kind of when Jesus is going through all of his trials, he's being beat up, he's being taunted, and he just stays silent because he knows why he's there. He's rooted in his morals. He knows exactly what he's doing. And I think that really stands true to what I tried to do. I really found a great Bible verse that comforted me during that time, which is John 15:18. If the world hates you, know that they hated me too, because you stand up for what I stood up for when I was there. And I find that really encouraging, because it's something where obviously you don't want the world to hate you, that kind of sucks sometimes because you have your human emotion. But it's encouraging to know that when you're getting oppression like that, it means that you are standing up for the right things. I felt like that was a really long-winded explanation, so I hope that was it.
No, I appreciate, how vulnerable you are in that. And it's crazy to hear. And, Susie Q in the chat said that she's sorry you went through that. So, and as am I. So statistically speaking, many women are, especially young women, are more liberal or progressive. So why do you think that is?
Probably because it is easier to worship within than worship out of yourself. I think it's hard to lay your life down like that, because especially in this day and age where there's such easy access to hooking up, like hookup culture, like she was talking about. Easy access to drugs, to alcohol, all that kind of stuff. It's easier to just praise yourself than to admit that you're wrong. None of us like to admit that we've done something wrong, or admit that, we messed up or screwed up. And I think one of the biggest things about being a Christian is every day and realizing that you don't deserve what God did for us. You don't deserve that Jesus died on the cross. And, frankly, you don't deserve to be here right now, but you are, because someone loves you. But before you get to the someone loves you part, it's hard to go through all that other stuff before you get there. So it's just easier. And I think we live in a world where easier is better.
Yeah, we do. Coming out on the other side, though, you think it was well worth it?
Yes. 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 100%.
Awesome. So I'll go to the chat real quick here because we had a couple fly in here. So Shara said, I say this as a woman. Young women today are too emotional, don't think logically, and are extremely uninformed. Then Susie Q said, progressivism is emotionally driven. It's easier to virtue signal than to actually try to be virtuous. We live in Vanity Fair. Don't say it's wrong lest you be condemned. Michael, what's your take on those?
I mean, it's not wrong. What they're saying isn't wrong. A lot of the emotionalism that comes out of this is that women, and right back to the whole feminism argument, women have been targeted as a quote unquote minority, or as a victimed subgroup of people. And women are, people are inclined to believe that they are the victim. And that's always been the case. And it continues to be the case, except now it is culturally acceptable for everyone to find their victimhood mentality. And when an entire gender is assigned a victim label, it's easy, I think, for young women to hear that and say, you know what? Life is hard. Maybe you're right. Well, life is hard for all of us. And it's disturbing. There's lots of things that we could say about this, of even men choosing to be women so that they can identify in that and have a twofold sorts of victimhood, where now I'm part of the victim gender, but I'm also more confused because I'm transgender, whatever. Susie Q says, except us two gentlemen, we're obviously the oppressors.
Yes. Yes, we are. All this oppression that we are thrusting upon Anastasia. Actually, though, I no longer am a gentleman as of right now. I might be by the end of this stream, but I'm fluid. I'm kidding, I swear.
Good Lord.
But that's how it works.
Guys, see ya.
Yeah, right.
That's how it works, though, Anastasia. It's obvious that the patriarchy is rising again because we are taking all of women's spots, and you just need to understand that men do everything better than women. Clearly.
Including being a woman.
Including being a woman.
Just
exactly.
everything. Just who we are, yes.
Yeah. In all honesty, though, when it comes to the whole fifth wave feminism, if we want to call it that, because there's not individual waves, there's ripples all over the place.
Right.
But Susie Q, that's funny. Ma'am, you have a fantastic beard, she says.
Thank you.
Connor.
Thank you.
No, as a man who genuinely believes that femininity is to be desired and sought after for women, specifically females assigned at birth, what an incredible, wonderful thing. A godly woman who can find she is to be praised above all else. Like, these are the tenets that we hold ourselves to as Christian men. So if a Christian man is going to be forcing a woman to subjugate to his authority by standards of immoral, aggressive, hierarchical power play, that's not a biblical model, I don't believe. And we could go deeper into what the biblical model is. We don't have to go there necessarily at the moment, but if you follow Christ and if you want to read scripture correctly, you can look at Ephesians 5 and say, well, everyone likes to jump right to women, wives should submit to their husbands. Well, the immediate verse before that, which I like to remind people, is submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And if we're going to actually live in a way that is reverent toward Christ, I will submit to my wife in the masculine way that God has called me to, so that I would give up my life for her. And Jesus says to his disciples, there's no greater love than that one would give up his life for another. So loving my wife is the greatest privilege I have. It is also the greatest challenge that I have. And her submitting to me is how that can work really well. And we can talk about what submission looks like. I know that's a dirty word to a lot of Christians and everyone alike. but submission is not overwhelming authority and forcefulness. I think it's reverence and love for one another in keeping with repentance in our relationship as well. So, as a man who leans conservative and is biblically minded and believes that men can be masculine in accordance to their actual sexual gender, and females can be feminine and express beautiful, amazing, valuable, and necessary feminine qualities. I think that the biblical model for this is more reverent towards women than anything we're seeing in the prevailing culture currently. How is it reverent towards women to have men establish themselves as transgender and then dominate in sports, or win Woman of the Year on multiple occasions, to win these awards that are saying that a man who has been medically altered to become a woman is a better representation of femininity than the actual women who are worthy of great praise in our culture?
Yeah. Yeah. And something that Michael and I try to do a lot with this podcast is we try to really assist men in that role. We have a weekly show and we cover a whole lot of topics, and we don't get to always cover everything as in detail as we want, but there are quite a few single men who watch this podcast. So, Anastasia, do you have any advice on what these single men can do to make themselves more compatible with conservative women?
Oh, that's a toughie. Honestly, so before I met my husband, I would suggest to not date the Anastasia that I was before I met my husband. I also think though that's such a problem with women too, is when you don't lay your life down, for one, you also don't get that love and satisfaction from God, and so you seek it out in so many different ways, whether that's sex or guys and things like that. So I think that my dad growing up always gave me the best advice, which was, he said, never date a man who doesn't have a job, doesn't have a car, and hasn't gotten beaten up at least one time. He told me that my whole life. But I think as far as guys to girls, is I think to hold out, to never give up any of your criteria just because you don't feel like you're ever going to find someone, or you don't feel like anybody ever fits all of the boxes. Obviously if your box is like has to be blonde, has to be blue hair, it has to do that, whatever, I'm like, whoa, okay. But if you're looking for a godly conservative woman, or just a godly woman in general, I think it's best to hold out and wait for that, because it's worth it, and it's something that I wish that I had done in my own life.
Yeah. Well said. All right, guys, you heard it. All you single men out there.
Yeah. Can I just
go ahead?
Harp on something that Anastasia was just saying, is that she's saying the ideal scenario, and yet can we acknowledge the beauty of God's grace in your life and in Stephen's life, so that in the midst of the nastiness that you had been caught up in, he has still made himself Lord over your life against the odds, it would seem. So praise Jesus for that. That's an incredible thing. 100%. And 100%. For the guys listening, that's also a big part of the freedom that Christ offers, is freedom from our own stupidity, our own addictions, our own sexual issues, be it identity issues, pornography issues, or the like. There is freedom that can be found.